A lot of people were doing a double take yesterday in Las Cruces.
In 1962, the first African oryx arrived in New Mexico, realizing one man's dream to draw game hunters to the state's deserts and mountains. Today there are thousands of oryx running wild here. To understand the compulsion to fill the American desert with African animals, we have to go back in time.
For the desert, nothing can beat the camel.
In 1800, the geographer Conrad Montbrun was banished from Denmark. From his new home in Paris, he was the first to suggest that camels would thrive in the Australian outback. 18 years later, that became a reality. A camel named Harry was the first to survive the voyage to Australia. But then he caused a freak accident which fatally wounded his owner, explorer John Horrocks. This is a real thing. You can look it up. After that bad start, from the 1860s, camels gained significant ground in Australia. In the 20th century, many were let loose, and there are 1 million feral camels in Australia today. Okay, no time for Australia. Back in the US, American soldiers were also thinking about camels, especially after the Mexican-American War. Major Henry C. Wayne promoted the idea and found a sponsor in Jefferson Davis, then a senator, better known for his future misadventures. When Davis became Secretary of War, Major Wayne was put in charge of the US Camel Corps. He purchased camels abroad and first brought them to Texas in 1856. The next year, a Lieutenant Edward Beale made a demonstration march across Texas, from San Antonio to El Paso, and up through New Mexico to Albuquerque. Despite interest in using the camels for reconnaissance or mail delivery, the project was mostly abandoned during the Civil War. According to the legend of the Red Ghost, the last feral camel in the Southwest was shot in Arizona in 1893. The Texas Camel Corps continues to perform reenactments in the region. The Camel Project got adapted into a 1970s comedic western.
Humps, the story of 16 camels and the men who loved them.
I hate camels!
In 1910, Frank Hibben was born in Ohio. In the 1930s, he first came to New Mexico to collect specimens for the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. He decided to do his graduate studies in zoology at the University of New Mexico. He would write a paper about mountain lions. He's also discovering a love for hunting. In 1950, he would write a book about hunting bears. Meanwhile, in Texas, King Ranch started to release antelope for game hunters on their land between 1930 and 1941. With the ranch's fences not doing much to contain them, about 15,000 now live across Texas. As Hibben settled into an academic career as an anthropologist, he made his first research trip to Africa in 1946. In 1950, when Hibben was on New Mexico's State Game Commission, the state got its first exotic game animal, Barbary sheep from North Africa. I didn't find good records of press about it at the time. In 1956, Hibben appears in an AP story in newspapers across the country. He had shot a record-sized oryx and other species of antelope in Kenya. Over the next few years, Hibben went on other hunts in Iran in the time of the Shah, and the Sahara, where he hunted a scimitar-horned oryx. He writes the book Hunting in Africa. In 1962, Frank Hibben is now both chairman of Albuquerque's Zoological Board and New Mexico's Game Commission. This puts him in a unique position. Under his supervision, the first 8 African oryx arrive in New Mexico and are placed in the Albuquerque Zoo. Legally, imported wild animals must remain in the zoo. Only their offspring can be released onto rangeland. Also this year, the Phoenix Zoo and Operation Oryx start collecting the last Arabian oryx from the wild. In recent years, this international project has recovered the Arabian oryx from the brink of extinction and returned them to the wild. I think this sometimes gets mixed up with New Mexico's oryx, which are a different species and not endangered in their natural habitat, the Kalahari Desert. In 1965, the Albuquerque Zoo releases their first 9-month-old oryx at a fenced-in preserve in Red Rock, New Mexico. By 1970, about 15 oryx are released on the White Sands Missile Base. The animals can easily come and go over the fence. The site is chosen because the oryx will not compete with cattle, and they'll be more isolated from humans. Hibbens also gets New Mexico to release the Persian ibex by helicopter. By 1971, this project has been in development for a decade and is starting to get noticed. Robert Jansen, the Phoenix native directing Arizona's Game and Fish Department, makes it clear that any exotic animals that cross the border will be destroyed. Jansen would later be promoted by President Reagan to direct the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. In 1974, New Mexico issues the first 5 licenses to oryx hunters. The following years they offer 6, and then 12. In recent years, there are as many as 1,500 oryx killed in a year. If you search for videos about New Mexican oryx, probably the majority of videos that you'll see are from hunters. Hibben constantly discusses plans for 4 more species: kudu, Persian gazelles, markhor, and red Elburz sheep, but is not meant to be. A new governor, Bruce King, creates a task force investigating the exotic animal program and its financing. It's decided that kudu have not adapted to New Mexico's winters. By 1987, as the population rose to 600 plus oryx and federal regulation got more strict, Frank Hibben urges the state to reinvest in 11 different species. In the Ice Age, there were many more types of animals living all over New Mexico. If you're this type of person today, you should check out the Megafauna Rewilding subreddit, but in 1987 it was pretty niche. Environmentalists and ranchers became concerned that the oryx would spread disease. There was an outbreak of scabies mites in desert bighorn sheep in 1978. In 1980, they would join the endangered species list, and by 1997, there was only 1 ewe remaining. There are also concerns that oryx compete with the native pronghorn for the same foods. There's a common belief that oryx have no predators in New Mexico.
Experts thought predators would help control the population. Not the case. Our mountain lions are tiny compared to the African lion.
And they don't have any natural predators.
There's a modern legend of a ranger seeing an oryx with a coyote caught on its horns. More recently, there were studies of mountain lion attacks on oryx. Sometimes they catch a newborn, but researchers recently found one male mountain lion had killed 29 oryx. And don't forget, people eat oryx. The Las Cruces region also used to be home to jaguars. There are some discussions of reintroducing them to the area, though I haven't seen any research about whether a jaguar would eat an oryx. By the early 1990s, the oryx had spread inside of White Sands National Park, where they did not have to worry about hunters or other grazing animals. Around 1995 or 96, the park built events to enclose the area, but that left some wayward oryx inside the park boundaries. The service considers bringing in hunters to shoot the remaining 100 to 200 oryx. This outraged wildlife protectionists, so they ended up trapping most of the oryx and releasing them outside the park with contraceptives. Today there are probably no oryx left inside the park, except when there are issues with the fence. In 2001, with thousands of oryx now running wild, High Country News caught up with Frank Hibben. "We have more oryx in New Mexico than in all of the Kalahari," he says. "I'm thrilled that they are doing so well." Hibben died the following summer.
The oryx is considered an exotic animal and not very common to see in this region, but officials are now warning drivers about the dangers on the roads and the consequences for those who take their heads off as trophies.
Today, sources vary, but there are thousands of oryx. They have been appearing north of El Paso and Fort Bliss in Texas, across New Mexico, always spreading out of control. Though not if that one mountain lion has anything to say about it. This is my science channel, which is just getting started. I hope you learned something new. I appreciate if you like, comment, or subscribe and help get these videos out there. Thanks.